Hello, everybody, and welcome to kind of my first live stream here on this channel. I've done a live stream before, but it doesn't really count. So anyway, here I am. In this video, I want to address something that I've been seeing a lot on my previous videos. Been getting a lot of comments, of people expressing. I mean, you can go back and look. Hella frustration. A lot of frustration. A lot of people fed up with how things are going, and interestingly, not being able to land a job. And I say that because I say interesting, not in any condescending way. Obviously, is interesting in the fact that a lot of these people, a lot of comments are saying like, I've been at this forever trying to find a job, and I haven't landed anything. And so at this point, I don't believe at all that this is even real, that these employers, that these companies are really even looking to hire anybody. And so and some others going as far as saying, I'm done. I'm done trying to look for a job. I'm done trying to like find a place to work because nobody wants to hire me. I go on interviews, I put in hundreds of applications, and nobody takes me in. And I want to address this because one of the biggest drivers in why HR world doesn't hire people is because of ageism. Ageism is so real in the labor markets for a number of reasons I'm going to spell out here. I prepared a couple of things for y'all, but ageism is very likely the reason people that complain about it don't get hired. And so before we get started, guys, I just wanted to thank you all the people that subscribe to the channel, that like my content, has been sharing my content. Thank you all. You all make this great and, fulfilling and encouraging. Doing YouTube is like, it's not easy. It's not easy, especially when you're new and you don't know where your channel, where you want your channel to go. And you don't know what to say, what to make videos about, and it could take a long while for anyone to find their niche, to find their curve, find something that works. And I think I found it with this channel. This is not my only channel. I have multiple channels, some much bigger than others, but this one has kind of been my pet channel. That I wanted to make a channel to go on things that I really, really, actually, genuinely care about. And anyway, here we are. So, guys, let's talk about ageism in the workplace. So a lot of times employers purposefully look for younger candidates. And I don't think this is like new to a lot of people. This would be unsurprising. But employers look for younger candidates for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're more likely to take less pay, more likely to work with fewer benefits, and they're more eager and more willing to learn new things and more apt and capable with technology. Bringing me into the first reason why they avoid older workers. The first one is because of a lower aptitude towards technology, a lower likelihood to be embracing of technology, which also translates to a higher likelihood that an older candidate will be more difficult to train. So let me give you a scenario. So in my current work, I do a lot of marketing, and in doing marketing, I work for a company doing marketing, and then I also through that do a lot of like side consulting work, and I deal a lot with HR world, HR people, HR world, and the general consensus is we want people that are young, people that obviously are trainable, meaning that they're smart, and people that won't take much pay. The biggest one is pay. We want people that we can demand a lot of for little pay. And by golly gee Whitakers, the reason why we're not getting hires is because people want too much money. We offer as high as 26 an hour, but we don't want to pay them that. We want to pay them 14. And so they're asking for too much money, and so we got to turn them down. We got to turn them away because they're asking for too much money, which is like nonsense, is bullshit, and it's the reason for all the ire in the comment sections of my videos. People are sick of that shit, and people are done putting up with that. What good is it? What good is it? You're already working in 2 jobs, right? To take a job that will still leave you on government assistance lines. What's the point? If I'm going to work 40 hours a week, plus another 18 or 20 hours on my part-time job, maybe doing Uber Eats, and then I still got to go apply for food stamps or something, some kind of assistance like that to be able to get by. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any logical sense to work. And then, like, God forbid you work, not God forbid, but like, imagine compound that with insurance. I got insurance, but like, goddamn, my premiums are ridiculous. And I got a deductible that I'm never going to meet on a given year. 10,000. I got a family plan, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, $15,000 deductible that I got to meet before I get 80% of a benefit. Any kind of coverage that, keep it real, I already pre-covered through my premiums. So it's not a benefit. Plus, side note to HR people, employers, health insurance, that's not much of a benefit anymore. You got to do better. You got to go further than just saying, hey, man, you know what? Other competitors don't offer health insurance and we offer health insurance. That's not enough. That's not enough. That doesn't mean anything, especially to younger people, because that's not something they think that, or know that they're going to tap into. Older people do. And so embracing technology is one of the reasons why a lot of employers avoid hiring people typically over the age of 40. Is because to them, you're much more likely to be more rejecting of technology, harder to teach how to use things like, emails and all the technology that comes with modern day work, especially if you're doing any white collar work. When it comes to blue collar work, a lot of times employers avoid hiring older candidates because they view you more as a liability than an asset. What do I mean by that? Liability meaning in their mind, you're much more likely to be slower and unable to keep up with the pace of other more productive workers. You're also more likely to get hurt on the job, especially if you are, up there in the years and not really firm with, your gait, meaning your ability to stand and work and do things. Or, if your mind, is a little more relaxed, than how it used to be, or you're just not up to the complexities of modern day how-to on things, you're more likely to get injured on the job, thus workman compensation and so on and so forth. And so that's another reason why employers generally avoid hiring older people. And you might think, well, shit, I got so much experience. I've been doing this for so long, and I should be qualified. But they tell me I'm overqualified. Let me tell you about that too. Being overqualified generally, by and large, means they know that you've got a good case to ask for a lot of money. Or that's that's a way for them to nicely say to you, hey, we're not going to hire you. Right? The whole package, the whole thing, we do our cost analysis, because especially with bigger corporations, everything's through a cost analysis. All right, we invest in this. How much do we get back? Or how much do we avoid losing by investing in this thing? And you're just a commodity to them to be sold and traded, and they won't, they will say you're overqualified as a nice way of saying no thanks, or we're not going to hire you. But really, what it means is, you're too much risk of loss to them, or they know that you have every reason that they cannot rebut to ask for more money, and they just don't want to pay you. As we all know, they don't want to pay you anything. If they can get away with it, they'll pay no labor, which is why they're running towards AI and automation and things like that, because, cost of maintenance is much preferable to employers than, paying minimum wage. And so there's those couple points of, embracing technology, being viewed more as a liability than an asset. And then liability, that also goes into health insurance. So I've seen companies that have group health insurance. And as far as I understand, through the Affordable Care Act, you can't discriminate on a person based on pre-existing conditions. That's great. But in a lot of cases, that's like year one or for a short amount of time. And then when open enrollment starts again, right, especially if you're a company where your employers cover a big portion of, your health insurance, including a portion of like your deductible and things like that, things change dramatically when you bring an older person into the mix, because then the older population is more likely to have health issues or require more frequenting of, healthcare settings. So like going to doctors more and seeing their specialists more, like I've developed arthritis or I've developed diabetes. More extreme cases, which is why I think they mostly avoid hiring older people is because, heaven forbid, you get cancer. You get cancer, then everything changes. Everything, cost of everything goes way up for the group plans, right? And so so it suddenly goes from, I worked for a company where they covered deductibles and premiums were fair and decent, but then I think it was something like in 1 year, like 3 or 4 people were diagnosed with cancer, and then next thing you know, they're like, hey, they footed the deductible on the staffers. And me, it was just me. My deductible was $1,000, right? I was making, well, I think like 17 an hour, $1,000, and I'm like, there's no way. I don't have I'm not gonna have $1,000 this year sitting around to pay in any deductible. But then my coworkers, $15,000 deductible, right? And it can get that extreme when you get things like cancer in the mix when it comes to health insurance coverage, especially group health insurance coverage. And so something like that happens, then if you're someone with cancer, heaven forbid, aggressive cancer, right? And you're that person that, in a given year, you might hit catastrophic. Catastrophic meaning that the cost of your health care has exceeded a number. Back in years ago when I was in healthcare, it was like $1 million. If your cost of healthcare hit $1 million, insurance stops, everything stops, and you're on your own, right? And so then doctors would like mark on your chart catastrophic. Why? I don't know, because I guess even doctors are like, I'm not trying to, or maybe they're trying to keep track of like, what to write off or what have you. But you could reach catastrophic, and that gets really expensive. Which, listen, man, health insurance for what it is, it's again, it doesn't feel like insurance. It feels like it's not a benefit. But excuse me. But there are those things. And then there's, they look at older people like, okay, inherently you will be less willing to learn. You will inherently be more conservative, right? And I'm not talking politically conservative. I'm talking about conservative with your way of doing things, right? So if you have someone that worked at IBM from 1970 something, or whenever its conception up until when it went under, and then you bring them into Microsoft today, right? That's going to be something where like they have to learn a whole new thing, a whole new culture, a whole new everything. And being older, you're much more likely to be more conservative, meaning set in your ways. Set in your ways, less likely to embrace new things, new cultures, new whatever, according to HR world. And that becomes a headache with like training you, especially, we train you on something. Let's say you get through that hurdle of learning, this whole new system of Teams and Outlook and whatever it is that pertains to your job, right? And then the company decides, hey, man, it's in our interest to invest in this new thing that we'll have to teach everybody how to use. If you're older, they're already thinking like, yeah, this guy or this lady is going to have more of a hard time. We're going to have a hard time teaching them because we can barely get them to, open up their email from like or open up a MailChimp or go onto a server or what have you. And so, less willing to learn new things. And listen, guys, when it comes to applying, there are things you can do. So the first thing you got to know are these basic things. And I hope you take this home with you and like understanding how HR thinks, what HR thinks about you as an older worker, as an older candidate, right? But there are things you can do to market yourself differently, to make a different approach so you're more likely to land a job. And the first thing you can do is, listen, spelling out all of your work history on your resume doesn't always work to your best interest. So if you've worked at, if you've had 7 jobs in your lifetime, you don't have to list them all out. Okay? As long as the most recent jobs are most relevant to whatever it is that you're applying to, you're good to go with that. But you don't have to say, hey, I worked in the same type of job or within the same company in different roles for the past 30 years. You can just say, hey, I worked in this role in that company for this many years. My point is giving away things on your resume that kind of clearly indicate your age, right? Because what you want, just like with employers, they do the same thing to us. What you want is an opportunity to get in there and make the case for yourself, right? To land an interview and make a case for yourself. Why I am deserving and qualified for this job. And then you can also, there's things like, education. Some people argue, and I kind of agree that with your education, you don't need to put down when you attended. You don't need to put down when you graduated. If you have that degree, that's enough. You don't have to put the timelines on those because that will also be something that gives away your age. And listen, in a perfect world, if you qualify for the job, if you can do the damn job, that should be enough, right? That should be enough for employers to accept you and employ you, right? When you do these things, just like with in many cases, like a typo, or like if there's any indication of, because racism and sexism is real too, indication of like your age and your gender or what have you, it'll throw it out. And so it's important to understand that it's not that they're not really hiring, because they absolutely are, right? It's not that they're not really hiring, it's that they want to hire certain people. But by law, they cannot say, hey, we only want young people. Hey, we only want Latinos. Hey, we only want black people. Hey, we only want white people, right? Hey, we only want men or women or whatever, Or in some cases, hey, we only want children, right? Rest in peace to those two kids who died in the past couple of years, 14 and 16-year-olds working in jobs that they shouldn't have no business working in, but like child labor is on the rise now. And like some companies are turning that way to get away with paying less money. It's freaking ridiculous. But it's important, guys, to think about that. They are hiring. They just don't want to hire older people for those reasons. But they can't say that. So like if I put up an ad on, well, Meta doesn't do it anymore, but if I were to put up an ad on Meta, on Indeed or what have you, there are regulations that say I as an employer, I cannot say only hiring, don't apply if you're this, don't apply if you're that, or I'm only looking for this, I'm only looking for that when it comes to race, age, gender, and so on. But when I get applications, right? Yeah. 100%. When applications come in, if I'm an employer and I see any indication that you're a candidate that I do not want, then I won't even consider your application. So I've seen resumes, first of all, too long. Condense them down to one page. I don't care how much you save the world. You can condense down your resume to one page. Okay. I promise you that in one page, you can tell everything an employer needs to know about you. Number two, don't put pictures of yourself, no matter how flattering. All right. I've seen resumes with people that have pictures of themselves that are like clearly like filtered selfies. Because like something about duck face where like people have this thing where like they want to like make their lips bigger than they are. You don't need to do that. You really don't need to do that. You don't need to put a glamour shot of yourself. That's not going to have any effect on whether or not they hire you. When you go into an interview, they're going to see you no matter what. And just don't put a picture of yourself. That's not something that is necessary. It's counterproductive. Also, don't put as little personal information as you can. Don't put your address on your resume. Don't put like your, definitely don't put your social security number. Don't put any license numbers on your resume. Nothing like that, because scamming is so real. I even made a video about that. Check that out in my roster of videos. Scamming is so real when it comes to applying for work, especially in Indeed. Indeed has a horrible reputation of housing scammers on there. So don't put anything that's really telling about who you are and any of your credentials where there's like a license number or anything identifying like that. And when it comes to your skill set, you can make multiple resumes. That's another thing I see people kind of go wrong. They make multiple resume. They make one resume trying to encompass everything, right? Like I worked at this place and even though they're totally different industries, like I did the same thing in all these different places or something different in all these different places. You can make multiple resumes. So that way, if you're applying for Microsoft as like, some kind of IT specialist, but then you also have experience working as a administrative assistant for Google, right? You can make separate resumes and just make a resume that speaks to whatever job or specific role you want to fill. This way, it's kind of like it's cleaner, it's to the point because especially if you're like big companies that have like wait lists of people or they don't have as much demand for workers because they hold on to people. You want to be that resume that's like to the point and sexy as hell. That when they look at it, they see all the things that they would traditionally throw it away for, like typos, or if it looks just too fanciful and unnecessary things like bar graphs and like graphics and things like that. That's so unnecessary. Keep it straight to the point because you're one of like hundreds of applications of resumes that they're looking at, and you don't want to waste their time, right? And also as a means to be efficient for yourself. When you have multiple resumes that are like laser focused on whatever role you want to fill, right? Then you can fire out a bunch of resumes, you know, quickly, efficiently, and help you get jobs or at least job interviews quicker. And but no matter how you slice it, older people do have a tougher go of it, and it's messed up. And but it's something that if you're aware of the why, if you understand the why, then you understand the thinking of the people that you want to convince to hire you. Okay, even though I'm of a mind that listen, if you're elderly, if you're at that retirement age, you should just be enjoying your golden years. But unfortunately, the way things are now, for a lot of people, that's just impossible. And I think that it's so messed up that we live in the system that we live in where elderly people have a tougher go of it, even if they have like a lot of years of experience busting their ass working. And yeah, so guys, I hope this was helpful. My first live stream, at least uh, you know, I don't see if you guys have any questions also. I don't see, man, nobody's in here at all. But that's all good. I'm not tripping. Doesn't surprise me in the least. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is also, listen, I'm gonna keep it real and be a little talking a little personally about myself. This is also why I write. I write my content a lot because when I go live, I, I'll be real. It's sometimes I wonder, am I being cohesive, right? Am I staying on topic? And I don't know, I've never gotten any feedback on that. I run a Spanish channel where I go live a lot, and it's kind of different because it's kind of baked in the cake where I'm actively talking to people, answering questions, just chit chatting with people. But depending on the feedback I get from this, if I was thinking also, because I've seen a lot of comments where people are asking questions like, what questions do I ask for, like if I work in the restaurant industry, or if I work in, if I work in media, and I'm interviewing for a job, or like, can you give me some tips and pointers on like, how should I attack this, approach applying for a job, or interviewing with people, and then how do you deal with group interviews, which is like ultra, ultra anxiety inducing. Like going in group, I've interviewed in places where like, police departments and all kinds of shit where it's like, it's more than one person interviewing you. And man, oh man, that's tough. What I typically do is I just kind of just assume I didn't get the job and just go into kamikaze mode, right? And I just be like, and just act, I just talk and answer like, I know I'm not getting this job. So now we're just chatting. We're having a conversation now. I did that once for a police department where it was like 5 people, like a sergeant, a captain, and and I was just applying to be a cop. It wasn't any kind of high profile or anything. I wanted to be a beat cop at the time. Not anymore, obviously, but I was like sitting there, and at first I was like really nervous, but then I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna approach this like I know I'm not getting the job, and I'm never gonna see these people again. And so, yeah, I went into what they call fuck it mode. And I went in there and they asked me questions. And I just spoke from the heart, spoke from the hip, and they really liked me. They really liked me. I just couldn't pass the physical exam. I couldn't get my ass in shape for nothing. It was tough. They wanted me to run like, and it wasn't a lot. It was like run like a freaking mile and a half, in so many minutes, like 12 minutes, right? Like my best ever I ever did was like 8 mile minute, 8 minute mile, and then do so many sit ups, so many push ups, and like I couldn't do this, the sit ups. The sit ups, I just couldn't get my core right. I could run, I could bang out those push ups, I could jump. You got to jump a certain height. I just couldn't do them sit ups, man. It was a pain in the ass. But anyway, but when I interviewed, right, I knocked it out the park. In fact, listen, man, I'm tooting my own horn a little bit, but I don't in my life. I think there was just I could count with one hand how many interviews I been on where I didn't get some kind of offer, right? It's because I feel like I shine with interviews, pretty much. But yeah, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't know. That's why I'm like kind of getting into this niche because, you know, why not? Why not help people? People that like do struggle. Maybe it's like maybe your age isn't a thing. Maybe you're just terrible at interviewing. Maybe you're just like trash at interviewing. And like you lock up, you choke up, and like it shows because listen, when you interview with somebody, that's basically you're having a conversation about like, okay, how compatible are we? Can we be good together as a worker-employee relationship? Right? If I'm gonna take on this role, right, and you're basically communicating everything's first impression. Am I gonna be a bum? Am I gonna be lazy? Am I competent? Right? Am I quick on my feet? Do I have leadership qualities? All the things that they might be looking for. And then with you interviewing them, because you're interviewing them as well. That's another thing disconnect that a lot of people suffer is like they look at it like I'm going in to be interrogated. You got to ask me questions to interrogate me, so and to determine whether or not I'm worthy of that job. When it should be, we both mutually going in to have a conversation to see if this mutual partnership is worthwhile, worth pursuing. That's the way I look at it. Whenever I go into any job interview, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna talk with you. And I'm going to ask you questions. I got to ask you questions because I need to know, am I wasting my time or not? Is this job tolerable or not? Because if I go into work every day and I hate my job and I'm thinking about calling out, I'm out of here. If I can make that determination beforehand, I save myself stress, anxiety, depression, headaches, right? And I save you headaches because I won't be at my best, right? And I save your company headaches. I save your company's bottom line because I will not be at my best. Therefore, I shouldn't be there. And same thing for me. If I can determine beforehand that you will be the bane of my existence, I'm not going to take that job. And I will say, no, thank you. Right. But in all that process, you learn that through asking questions and building some kind of initial rapport, right? Because especially if it's a job you really want, right, you got to be phony to some degree. Everybody does it, which is why my philosophy is you don't know somebody until they're at least 90 days in. Friends, family, long lost family you just met, relationships, work, right? You don't know your employer, you know your coworkers, you don't know anything until 90 days in, right? And so beforehand, it's important to ask questions and learn what you can, through interviewing. And then there's things like, a lot of factors go into like body language, and of course how they respond. So a couple quick things before I end this transmission. I always ask every employer, how did you fare the recession in '08? Right. And then after that, I asked them, all right, how did you manage through the pandemic? Right. And this is assuming that the company's been around during both times. But I asked them because basically that's asking them, okay, how do you manage your money? And then when the shit hits the fan, how do I know how you're going to treat me? What treatment will I get? Where will I be in priorities? Right? If you hit a 2008, have another financial crisis, right? Where am I going to be in the midst of that? What's going to happen to me? Am I going to be laid off? Where am I going to be in the totem pole with that? Where will the company be? Is your company equipped? Do you have policies in place to deal with that sort of issue if it does come up when it pertains to the markets crashing or what have you, right? Basically saying like shit hits the fan, am I going to be all right? Then with the pandemic, with the stock markets, that's because you could blame the markets for that. You could blame how things are going on in the world, events in the world for that. But then when it comes to like things like a pandemic, right? It's like can't blame the market on that. That's a fucked up thing that happened where everybody ended up, having at no fault. A lot of people just couldn't go to work. As a matter of human solidarity, it was like, all right, we gotta do the social distancing. Of course, nobody had a manual on that. Nobody had a manual on that. Everybody just kind of taking it in stride and doing what they can, what's best according to what we know at the time. And then, of course, as time progressed, we learned a lot more and realized, okay, yeah, we could have done hindsight's 2020. We could have done a bunch of things differently, but here we are now. And then when you go in to find a job, it's important to ask them, all right, if another pandemic hits, what did you learn? What safeguards do you have in place to protect people like me? And that's also asking, where do you value me? Right? If I'm working here and you're faced with one of these crises, where do you value me as an employee? How valuable is my role here? So you can make an informed decision. That's the whole point of interviewing everything. So you mutually can make an informed decision on whether or not to move forward, working for that person and that person hiring you. And yeah, so anyway, that's all I got for this. I can actually just go on and on and on and on and on forever, but I'm not going to because honestly nobody's watching. But it does feel good to let this out. And that's all I got, guys. Thank you all once again for everybody that subscribed and is watching. I appreciate you all. And yeah, if you find my content useful and helpful, if you want me to elaborate more, because I feel like I do a lot better writing content, so I'm more cohesive and clear and in depth and making produced videos. But I do feel like I like to believe that I am good at doing live chats and chatting with people, answering questions, and just talking on the topics, and yeah, I'm looking in here, no comments, and thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace.